The question of whether Jesus Christ existed as a historical figure opens doorways to understanding consciousness that transcends linear time frameworks. From certain spiritual perspectives, the Christ consciousness represents not a past event but a continuous, ever-present reality expressing through various forms across different time periods and cultures. The figure known as Yeshua represented one expression of what might be termed universal consciousness, the same fundamental awareness that manifests through various spiritual traditions as Buddha nature, Krishna spirit, or other designations for the collective consciousness of humanity. This perspective suggests that enlightened beings throughout history have accessed and expressed the same underlying spiritual reality through their individual personalities and cultural contexts. Understanding this requires recognizing that spiritual teachings have often been filtered through centuries of interpretation, political manipulation, and cultural translation that may have obscured original meanings. Many concepts attributed to historical spiritual figures were likely altered for purposes of institutional power and control, creating distance between authentic spiritual teachings and their popular interpretations. The relationship between masculine and feminine principles and spiritual development emerges as a crucial theme often overlooked in traditional religious frameworks. Ancient spiritual traditions understood that complete spiritual realization required integration of both aspects of consciousness, the active, penetrating quality traditionally associated with masculine energy and the receptive, nurturing quality associated with feminine energy. This integration was symbolically represented in various spiritual partnerships throughout history, where male and female figures worked together to demonstrate the balance necessary for complete spiritual expression. These relationships were not merely personal but represented archetypal principles that every individual must integrate within themselves to achieve spiritual wholeness. The metaphysical teachings underlying these spiritual traditions often bear striking resemblance to concepts now familiar in contemporary consciousness studies. Ideas about the creative power of belief systems, the interconnectedness of all existence, and the potential for ordinary individuals to access extraordinary states of awareness appear consistently across different spiritual lineages. The Christ consciousness, from this perspective, represents not an exclusive spiritual status but a potential available to every human being. Historical spiritual teachers were attempting to demonstrate what becomes possible when individuals fully actualize their connection to universal consciousness rather than creating systems of worship or dependency around their personal achievements. This understanding completely reframes the concept of spiritual following versus spiritual leadership. Rather than creating followers, authentic spiritual teachers work to awaken recognition of each person's inherent spiritual capacity. The goal is not worship but empowerment, not dependency but self-realization, not imitation but authentic expression of one's own connection to universal consciousness. The passion traditionally associated with spiritual awakening represents the natural response of consciousness recognizing its true nature. This burning intensity emerges when individuals align with their deepest purpose and most authentic expression. Rather than suffering, this passion becomes a source of tremendous energy and motivation for spiritual growth and service to others. The discomfort sometimes associated with spiritual awakening often reflects the resistance between old patterns of limited thinking and emerging recognition of expanded possibilities. However, this transition need not involve suffering when approached with proper understanding and support. The historical examples of spiritual teachers experiencing persecution or physical suffering represented specific lessons relevant to their time periods rather than necessary components of spiritual development. Modern spiritual seekers can learn from these examples without repeating the same patterns of conflict and struggle. The point of historical spiritual demonstrations was to show what becomes possible through complete alignment with universal consciousness, not to establish templates for suffering that future generations must endure. The burning heart symbol in Christian mysticism represents the intensity of complete alignment with one's authentic nature and deepest purpose. This passion burns away everything false, leaving only what is true and essential. Rather than painful, this process becomes ecstatic when embraced willingly and approached with understanding. Universal consciousness expresses differently across various civilizations and time periods based on the collective needs and developmental stage of each culture. In some societies, individual members can naturally access and express this universal awareness without standing out as exceptional because the entire civilization operates at a higher level of consciousness. In developing civilizations like contemporary humanity, certain individuals serve as examples and wayshowers, demonstrating potentials that remain largely dormant in the general population. These spiritual teachers function as bridges between humanity's current level of awareness and its evolutionary potential. The statement, "I am the way," from this perspective means, be like me because you are like me, but you don't recognize it yet. Spiritual teachers point toward the potential that exists within every individual while providing practical demonstrations of what becomes possible through complete spiritual development. The genetic and energetic constitution of certain spiritual teachers may include what might be termed hybrid characteristics, genetic or energetic modifications that allow them to function as clear channels for universal consciousness while maintaining human form. This doesn't make them non-human but enables them to serve as bridges between ordinary human awareness and cosmic consciousness. These hybrid characteristics appear in various great spiritual teachers throughout history, providing the physical and energetic foundation necessary to channel and express universal consciousness without distortion. The Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, Krishna spirit, and similar expressions all represent this same universal awareness manifesting through appropriately prepared vehicles. The misunderstanding of spiritual teachings often stems from literal interpretation of what were intended as metaphorical or symbolic instructions. When spiritual teachers spoke about their relationship to the divine, they were often describing states of consciousness rather than exclusive personal claims to divine status. The power of belief systems to create reality appears as a consistent theme across authentic spiritual teachings. The ability of spiritual teachers to perform what appeared as miracles often depended entirely on the belief systems and expectations of those around them. When people expected miraculous healing, it occurred. When they doubted based on familiarity with the teacher's ordinary human background, such phenomena became impossible. This demonstrates the fundamental role of consciousness in creating experience. Reality responds to deeply held beliefs and expectations, making faith and understanding crucial elements in spiritual development. The power lies not in external spiritual figures but in the consciousness that recognizes and aligns with universal spiritual principles. Contemporary metaphysical understanding provides frameworks for comprehending what ancient spiritual traditions taught through story, symbol, and demonstration. Concepts about consciousness creating reality, the interconnectedness of all existence, and the potential for ordinary individuals to access extraordinary awareness were central to original spiritual teachings before they became institutionalized. The alignment between authentic spiritual teachings and modern consciousness research suggests that ancient spiritual masters understood principles about the nature of reality that science is only beginning to investigate. Their demonstrations of healing, telepathy, and other psychic phenomena may have reflected natural human potentials that become available through proper spiritual development. The collective oversoul or group consciousness of humanity includes all individual expressions while transcending any single personality. Individual spiritual teachers serve as temporary focal points for this collective awareness, demonstrating what becomes possible when personal will aligns completely with universal intelligence. This collective consciousness continues to evolve as more individuals recognize their connection to it and begin expressing its qualities through their unique personalities and circumstances. The goal is not to create more followers of historical figures but to awaken more leaders who can express universal consciousness through their own authentic being. The extraterrestrial connections sometimes attributed to spiritual teachers may reflect genetic or energetic modifications that allow clearer expression of cosmic consciousness rather than literal origins on other planets. These modifications provide the physical and energetic foundation necessary for channeling universal awareness while maintaining human form and relatability. The hybridization process involves blending human genetics with more refined energetic patterns that can support higher levels of consciousness without overwhelming the nervous system. This allows spiritual teachers to serve as step-down transformers, making cosmic consciousness accessible to ordinary human awareness. Understanding these principles helps explain how spiritual teachers throughout history could demonstrate extraordinary abilities while maintaining essential humanity. They were not different species but humans whose genetics and energetic systems had been optimized for spiritual expression and service. The purpose of such modifications is always service to the collective spiritual evolution of humanity. These enhanced individuals serve as bridges, wayshowers, and examples of human potential rather than objects of worship or dependency. Their function is to awaken recognition of similar potentials within every person. The Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, Krishna spirit, and similar expressions all point toward the same underlying reality, the universal awareness that is the true nature of every conscious being. Historical spiritual teachers provided demonstrations of this consciousness in action, showing what becomes possible when human personality aligns completely with universal intelligence. The challenge for contemporary spiritual seekers involves recognizing this same consciousness within themselves and learning to express it through their own unique personalities and life circumstances. The goal is not to imitate historical figures but to achieve the same level of alignment they demonstrated while maintaining individual authenticity. This understanding transforms spiritual practice from external worship to internal development, from seeking salvation outside oneself to recognizing the divine nature that already exists within. It changes the focus from following established religious systems to developing direct personal connection with universal consciousness. The evolutionary purpose behind all authentic spiritual teachings involves awakening humanity to its true nature and potential. As more individuals recognize their connection to universal consciousness and begin expressing it authentically, the collective consciousness of humanity evolves toward greater wisdom, compassion, and creative capacity. The time period we are currently experiencing may represent a crucial phase in this evolutionary process, where these deeper understandings about consciousness and spiritual development become more widely accessible and applicable to ordinary human experience. The passion that burns in awakened consciousness represents the natural joy of recognizing one's true nature and purpose. This burning love extends to all existence, creating the motivation for selfless service and continued spiritual growth. Rather than painful sacrifice, spiritual development becomes an expression of love's natural tendency to give of itself for the benefit of all. Understanding these principles provides practical guidance for contemporary spiritual development while honoring the profound contributions of spiritual teachers throughout history. Their examples light the way without creating dependency, their teachings provide direction without limiting individual expression. Their demonstrations prove what is possible while encouraging personal discovery of the same potentials. The ultimate message woven through all authentic spiritual traditions points toward the same revolutionary understanding. Every individual possesses the same divine nature that was expressed through history's greatest spiritual teachers. The path involves recognizing, developing, and expressing this nature through one's unique personality and circumstances while serving the collective evolution of human consciousness. This recognition transforms everything: how we understand ourselves, how we relate to others, how we approach challenges, and how we contribute to the world. It reveals that we are not separate individuals struggling for survival but expressions of universal consciousness awakening to itself through infinite forms and experiences. The burning heart of spiritual passion emerges naturally when this truth is recognized and lived. It burns away illusions of separation and limitation, revealing the boundless love and creative potential that is our true nature. This is the Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, Krishna spirit, not as external ideals to worship but as internal realities to recognize, develop, and express for the benefit of all existence.